Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe, entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
Welcome to International Women's Day 2022. We love doing this every year, and International Men's Day as well, and any other sort of celebration that we can jump on because it's really important. And none so more than today, because I want to celebrate you for watching everything you've been doing these past couple of years. It's been tough, but it's great to see you all out and about. I was at an International Women's Day event last night in person. I took my daughter along as well, which was great. So thanks, Ashley King, for that. It was great for Jess to see so many inspiring people with great stories and sharing some really heartfelt and powerful subject topics last night, actually. Neurodiversity, going through trauma, recovering from alcoholism were some of the subjects that were spoken about. So I think from International Women's Day point of view, we do address lots of really important subjects. We're going to be doing that today with our guest. Again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's sharing this content. It helps us get into the eyes and ears of so many people who I think could benefit from this. The algorithms don't like us, okay? We don't put money behind, we don't promote, we don't take advertising. We're not one of the big kind of mainstream media. And I think that's good because solo casters, content creators, whatever you call ourselves, it's important to get the message out there and share what's going on in the world away from mainstream media. I won't get on my soapbox here, but I will give my thoughts to people out in Ukraine right now. I have a few people who I'm friends with on Facebook, for instance, who are sharing their own thoughts and their families, stories, which is great. So I think we all need to keep sharing real content because the mainstream media does not like this kind of stuff. I'll get off my soapbox now because it is tough as content creators. We know we need your help. We need you to support us. So let me know if you are here. It's great for us to see you popping in. So today's guest has worked in the field of autism for 18 years and has recently gained her Master's of Education in Autism. She's passionate about elevating the voices and learning from autistic people. She's also the author of her first book, The Infinite Journey, which outlines her journey working in the field of autism. So welcome to the Industry Angel, Kerrie Highcock.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks for having me. Lovely to see you.
No, but then there's our Michelle there. Kerrie and Kieran Rose are fab friends, and she really helped him when he started the Autistic Advocate. And Kieran and 3 kids have COVID. Thanks, I'm immune. So Kerrie, you must know Kieran well.
Oh, very well. Very good friends. I'm with Michelle as well, so it's lovely to see you here. Yeah, me and Kieran do a lot of work together. He's incredible. I'll give a shout out for his page, The Autistic Advocate. Go and follow him if you want to know anything about autistic experience. So yeah, and Michelle as well. Michelle is absolutely lovely, and of course the children.
Well, let's give him a little bit of a plug. Is that a blog that Kieran writes?
Oh, he does everything, Ian. So he does blogs, podcasts, live speaking. He's international. So it's Kieran Rose, The Autistic Advocate. He's just an incredible guy, as is Michelle, his wife, of course. And I've got the pleasure to have them in my lives. I know the children as well. So yeah, so follow all of his work. He's fabulous. And Michelle also has her own company. Michelle does a lot of work around network marketing. So her company is wonderful as well. So Michelle, pop it in the box because I forget the name of it though.
Let's say hello to Laura Jane Forbes from Grace House, and another wonderful organisation. Who else? We've got Lisa. So proud of you, Kerrie. So you've got your cheerleaders in the room today?
Yeah, so Lisa's from our marketing department. She's also a good friend as well from Northeast Autism. And Nick as well. Nick King is one of my parents that I do a lot of work with. Absolutely fabulous. Nick has also got an autistic daughter who has an incredible page called Zap Advocacy. She's actually one of our young autistic advocates or activists. So have a little look at that as well. And Rachel, I know Rachel quite well. She's on here too. So yeah, I know quite a few of these people, which is lovely.
Wonderful. You've definitely got your cheerleaders out. Laura saying hello. Looking forward to hear from Kerrie. Good stuff. Thanks, Laura. And me, of course. You don't mean that. I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna own that. I'm throwing that up there. Thanks, Laura. Right, Mrs. Where do we start here then?
Who can say? Who can say I'm a complex character?
We know this. How about we wind it back, Kerrie? This is what we love to do. We start at the beginning with our guests. Tell me a little bit about who you are, where this all started.
Yeah, so I am originally from St Helens. As you might have picked up by now, I have a very unusual accent. I've lived in the Northeast for 14, 15 years now, so I've got a very strange Northeast, Northwestern slang going on. But my journey really started way back when I, went to college, trained as a nursery nurse in early years. But I was always very interested in special educational needs. I have a brother who is 8 years older than me, but he had or was back then diagnosed with a learning disability. He since has been diagnosed as autistic. So I was always very interested in SEN from a very early age and tried to support him and teach him and force him to eat vegetables even though he didn't want to eat them, and now I know why. So the journey began, and I went to work at a unit for autistic children in St Helens, and they were really my early days, and that's where a lot of the inspiration from the book come from, really. I then went on to university, so I went to Liverpool John Moores Uni and studied education and SEN, and again I was just really passionate about the world of autism. I kind of found, when you find your niche and of where you need to be, that was kind of fitted for me, and I didn't really know what else I would do going forward apart from the world of autism. So I completed my degree, and then I moved up to the Northeast 14 years ago, which is a wonderful place in the country. And I've been here ever since. I was lucky enough to get a job at Northeast Autism Society, which is a big charity in the region, which has a variety of different services. And I started off as a community service manager, which was supporting children, evenings, weekends, after school, that type of thing. I've since kind of had many different job roles in that organisation, and now I'm family development manager, which means I develop models of post-diagnostic support across the region, as well as doing many other things. Alongside that, I went and did my master's in autism at Strathclyde Uni. So I just kind of came across it and thought, a master's degree, me, little old Kerrie from St Helens, there's no chance I can do that. But I did it. And when I stood on that stage at graduation, it was absolutely incredible. My supervisor then encouraged me to do a PhD or a doctorate, which I said I would do. It's hard work. But it's going to be worth it. So yeah, my journey has always been around autism, a lot of learning, meeting the most incredible people. So now I live in South Shields, I have a wonderful partner, and I've got a beautiful little dog. That's the journey so far in a nutshell.
That wasn't a nutshell. I didn't know where to start. I've made that many copious notes really quickly because it's interesting. You talked about your brother, Kerrie, and you mentioned that he was diagnosed with a learning disability. Now, I don't know when that might have been, 80s, I don't know, we're giving our age away maybe. Was things very different back then? Was things lumped together? Were things not diagnosed as well as they are now?
Well, no, they weren't diagnosed well at all, because actually he's recently, at 48 years old, been diagnosed as autistic and not having a learning disability. So that's the interesting thing. Actually, his original diagnosis doesn't actually meet the criteria now, all those years on. Things were very different, very different. I think a lot of, stigma, marginalisation. Life was really, really hard for him, and he won't mind me saying this. I have consent to share all of his stories. And I think we've moved on, Ian, but I don't think we've moved on enough at all.
Okay. What do we do then? I mean, we're diving really, really far into it here, but what do we do then? We haven't moved on enough. Well, I know you talked that it's going to be, is it National Autism Week or Global Autism Week? I don't know, in March. Is that something that will...
Yeah, Autism Acceptance Week, the end of March, start of April. Basically, Ian, we need to do better. As a society, we have got to do better. And part of that is about acceptance. So, a few years ago, we talked a lot about autism awareness and, let's make people a bit autism aware. Let's get them wearing, their badges and putting stickers in the windows of the cars and all of that stuff. But actually, it's quite passive to be aware. You're not actually doing anything. So I think we've got that shift now in mindset. Yeah, we can all be a little bit aware, but what are we going to do about it? What changes are we going to make life better for autistic people? And I think part of that is going back to recognizing what does marginalization look like for autistic people? So if you look at some of the, and a bit of trigger warning here for people that are autistic or have got families that have kind of joined in, some of those statistics are really alarming that we see now. So we've got high rates of exclusion and bullying for autistic young people. We have high rates of mental health conditions, so things like depression and anxiety, and that's often because people aren't getting the right support at the right time. If you look, at the more horrendous statistics around things like suicide, we know that autistic people are more likely to take their own life than a non-autistic person. So I think, we've got to face this stuff, and we've got to grasp a sense of reality about actually how difficult life can be for autistic people. And I think until we do that, we're never, ever going to be autism aware. We're never going to be able to say we accept autistic people. Because how can we if we don't understand the lived experiences of people?
Yeah. I'm going to actually take it a step back, and I'm going to ask you, what is autism? Because, the reason you're here, Kerrie, is to educate me and the viewers, okay? Because as you say there, how can we accept it if we don't actually understand it? So, given a platform like this to you is important to me, to be able to, kind of almost knock down the dominoes in society and let people know from an education point of view. So I'm going to take it right back, because I have no idea. What is autism? Let's take it right back to the start.
So, what a question. What a question. But,
Sorry.
so if you think about it, really, a lot of autistic people will tell you there's no such thing as autism, okay? There is only autistic people, because autism isn't something that we pick up and we put in our bag when we go out to the shops, or some days we might think we'll leave our autism in the house, we don't want to have it today. Being autistic is an integral part of who that person is. And what that means is it's a different neurology. So being autistic, and actually Kieran Rose, Michelle's lovely husband, talks about this, and he says, I am autistic from the tip of my head to the bottom of my feet. My brain works in an autistic way, therefore everything about me, the way I behave and experience the world, is autistic. So if we kind of break that down a little bit further, what we're looking at really is, we need some kind of guidelines, I suppose, around this. We need something to help us navigate. So for autistic people, we would be looking at differences in some main key areas of life. So that would be communication, socializing and social interaction. And then we have in the diagnostic manual, which is very negative, this idea of rigid, restricted, repetitive behaviours. So they're kind of the three things that you would be looking for if you were going for a diagnosis. Diagnosis can be complex for whole other reasons, but they're really the three key differences. Now, the way that those things impact somebody will look very different from people to people, just as it does look for non-autistic people. So if you take communication, you might have, I'll give you an example. My brother is verbal, so he has a verbal ability to communicate, and he can get his needs and wants met through speaking. Okay. Then I might work with another individual who doesn't use any verbal language at all to communicate, so isn't able to form words and sounds and make noises and things like that. So you can see that even though we've got these common differences, the way they present are all very different. And I think the other big thing, which is often clumped under the restricted repetitive behaviour stuff, is sensory. And sensory, so if you imagine now, Ian, you're sitting in your office there, you are listening to my voice and you're taking out the important bits of what I'm saying and making notes. You are looking at your screen and you're looking at your comments, and you're able to hopefully pick out the bits that are relevant, remember them, retain them, and do something with them. You will know, I've just seen you've got a cup of tea there, so you know if you're a bit thirsty, so you have a cup of tea. The temperature in the room, if you get particularly hot. I'm not telling you to take your top off, but that's something you might do. You get particularly hot. So what you're doing is you're regulating all of your sensory information. All that stuff is coming in second by second, millisecond by millisecond even. You're picking out the important bits and you are making sense of that experience. Now, we know that for autistic people, they can experience sensory processing very differently. So, sitting here now, the fact that there's a light shining on me could be problematic. And there's a truck or a van in the street. Now I can't concentrate on anything you're saying because that sensory stimulus has took over my processing. And the other big key takeaway I'd love people to know, particularly some of our professionals out there, is sensory differences aren't just a bit annoying. So, you know, when I was little, my nan used to give me a jumper. She'd knit these jumpers. I'd put them on and they would itch like mad. And it was horrible. But after about 5 minutes, I'd forget about that itch. If you are an autistic person with sensory processing difficulties, that itch is not going away. And they're not going to focus on the day ahead because all they can feel is that itch. Now, in some instances, that can be presented as pain. So when that person is saying to us in a busy classroom, I don't want to wear my blazer, miss, because it's hurting me, we need to validate that experience because that blazer probably is hurting that young person. So sensory differences are really, really key. And the other side of that is if you think about sensory overload. So for me, imagine Metro Centre Christmas Eve. Have you ever been here on Christmas Eve?
Unfortunately, yes.
How does it feel?
Bedlam.
Exactly. Now, you can get out of that situation. You can go and have a coffee. You can go and do your online shopping. You can get out of it, okay? For many of our autistic people, that feeling of Metro Centre Christmas Eve is constant because a lot of autistic people can't filter out all of that stuff. And if you know that feeling that you get when you get a bit anxious, you want to push people out the way, you want to stick your fingers in your ears, imagine that feeling all the time. And that is how some of our autistic people experience the world. And I think we need to validate that experience as very, very real. It's no point just saying, oh, they're being a bit awkward today because they won't put the jumper on or they won't take the jumper off. We need to validate this, really, this experience. So that was it summarised in a very, very brief PowerPoint that I have in my head. However, autistic experience is, of course, much wider than that. And I think, Ian, the thing is we have a lot of misconceptions that exist. We've got a lot of myths and a lot of inaccurate knowledge that we must address for autistic people.
Wow. Where do we...
Sorry, I never know when to stop talking.
No, it's good, and actually, I feel like I need to kind of process that because a lot of that is clicked into place. You know, that those metaphors were really powerful. Thanks for that. Obviously, these are some of the stories that you must tell quite often to people like me to help me understand it. So thanks for that. Interesting enough, though, there's a lot of guys who get diagnosed. Right? Is diagnosed the term? Yeah. So why is that? Why is it so high? Was it 5 or 6 times more likely that you're male than female? Is it, what's that?
Yeah, so the recent statistics are about four boys will be diagnosed to every 1 girl, but they're very outdated statistics, to be honest. Now, if you look back in history, back into the 1940s when Leo Kanner first started doing his studies on children. So Leo Kanner was the guy that first diagnosed autism, as we kind of know it now. That original study of a very small number was only done on boys. So we've always had this kind of gender bias almost around what being autistic is and what it isn't. And I think that bias has kind of gone through history, actually. I mean, if you think, Ian, as well, some of the media portrayals around autistic people, you know, you've got Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang, you've got the Doctor in The Good Doctor, Dr. Sean Murphy. It always tends to be the male, white, British stereotype, and that's not helpful, really.
Okay.
You know, I know in this group alone, we've got people that have daughters that are autistic. It isn't gender specific. Being autistic is not gender specific. It's not culturally specific. So some people believe only autistic people can be white. That's absolutely, totally inaccurate. So I think, you know, diagnosis is a tricky one because people can get missed. So I work with a lot of parents, actually, that when they start trying to understand the child's presentation, they'll actually sit in sessions and go, you have just described my whole childhood. And actually, a lot of those parents go on to receive a diagnosis because you've got to remember, you know, the field of autism is always developing and we've got all these misconceptions out there which create this problem with diagnosis. And actually, so for example, if you go for a diagnosis and you give good eye contact, so the clinician, if he's going off the textbook manual, will say, well, hang on, Ian gave me really good eye contact, therefore he can't be autistic. Now, what you could have done, Ian, is you could have learned over all your years of growing up how to do eye contact. You could have learned how to fit in, how to mask your true self.
Yeah.
So when you present yourself at that diagnostic appointment, you might seem like you're not autistic. but actually you're just incredibly good at masking. So I think we've got to be aware of that as well, that masking is a huge thing within this population, and masking is a survival strategy. It isn't just a thing people do, it's a survival strategy in many cases.
So you talk about going for a diagnosis. Should we? What is the benefit from that? Do we need a diagnosis if we feel that maybe someone could be autistic, whether that be a partner, a son or daughter, whatever?
Well, it's obviously a personal preference, but what I would say, and I know probably what a lot of the autistic people would tell us, is that if you have navigated, particularly as an adult, if you've navigated all your life and you've always felt different, okay, you've always felt like you've had struggles and you've not really fitted in to stuff, you don't have a name for that. You just then think that you're odd, weird, unusual, a bit of a geek. You give yourself all these negative names, really. If then all of a sudden you go through a diagnostic process and actually you are autistic, you now have a name for who you are. You have something to navigate. And I think the benefit of that, Ian, I've worked with many adults that have got that diagnosis later in life, and they've said to me, you know what, Kerrie, my whole life now makes sense. I know why I had trouble with relationships. I know why, I engaged in this behavior when I was younger. And the beauty of that is community. So everybody needs their tribe. We all need to find our people, okay? Autistic people need to find their people. And we know that when autistic people are in a community together, it's brilliant because, you need that shared understanding. And that's what having that diagnosis, or, self-diagnosing yourself, of course, as well, which is as valid, maybe not on paper, but is as valid to the person. It's about finding your tribe and learning from each other. And, there's an incredible autistic community. If I don't know if you're on Twitter, but if you have a look on there, there's tons of lovely stories where people are brought together. And, what a lot of our autistic adults are doing are they're fighting a civil rights movement here. They're fighting for the right to be accepted in a society that's been created really for non-autistic people. And you need people to do that with.
I'm really glad you rose that point. And our Claire there's done the same. I mean, the International Women's Day theme for this year is break the bias, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted you to jump on and help us with that. So, us as leaders, for instance, in business, then what can we do? What should we be doing? Do we need to educate ourselves, or if there's an employee that has a diagnosis, do we need to know? Do we not need to know?
Yes. Okay, so recent study 2021 shows that 1 in 5 autistic people are in employment. Okay, that's a problem. So we're missing some incredible skills for a start off,
yeah.
But we're also marginalising a hell of a lot of people. So for business leaders, what I would say is, first of all, we need to, exactly what you're doing today, Ian. You went right back and said, actually, we can talk about acceptance, but I'm not there. I need to understand the basic stuff. So understand the basic stuff, but understand from autistic experience. So I bring you today what I know. I've done a master's, I'm doing my doctorate, but the way that I learn best is listening to autistic experience, and I take that and I process it and then I present it on platforms like this. Okay, so I'm kind of that conduit, I suppose, in between autistic people that maybe don't have a voice. So I think that's the first thing, is learn, immerse yourself in autistic culture, read, listen to the podcast, listen to the challenges that people genuinely face on a day-to-day basis. And then I think when it comes to, the practical side of running businesses, do your employees feel comfortable to disclose that they're autistic? Because I've got some people who say to me, Kerrie, I would never tell my employer that I'm autistic, because I think then there would be a stigma attached to that and there'd be a label attached to it. So I think we've got to create workspaces where people feel comfortable to disclose. I think that's a really important point. And then the next thing would be looking at reasonable adjustments. This is a bit of a word that gets bandied about quite a lot. We must make reasonable adjustments. And sometimes people just write it down and they never really act on it. So what reasonable adjustments mean is basically, how can you accommodate the environment to make it better for people? And I tell you what, Ian, if you make it better for autistic people, I genuinely believe you make it better for everyone.
Yeah.
So I was doing a quiet hour a few months ago in a shopping centre where we turn all the music off, and it's lovely. You don't have the tannoys, you don't have all that audio stuff going on. It's really nice. And there was an older gentleman that came up to me who wasn't autistic, and he said, what's all this about? He said, this is absolutely brilliant. I said, oh, it's generally for autistic people or those that need a quieter environment. And he said, this is great. I wish it was like this every week and I would come out and do my shopping. So those reasonable adjustments is about acceptance. It's about doing. What can you do to make life easier? Is that giving a child in a classroom a woggle cushion? So a woggle cushion is basically a cushion that woggles about when you move on it. Now, if you've got a child that can't sit still like me, I move about a lot in my spinny chair. If you're telling them, sit still, look at me, and they can't move, they're going to get stressed out. So let's give them a woggle cushion. If you have somebody who has handwriting difficulties and can't use a pencil, why can't we give them a pen? And I'm not even going to get started on that because there's these things in schools now called pen licenses where you need to work so hard to earn the right to use a pen. Some children need a pen from day one because that's how they write. So, sometimes these reasonable adjustments can be quite challenging to put in, let's just say. And I'm sure some of the parents would agree with me.
I'm sure they would, and thanks for Michelle to sharing so much. And it is great when we can put it in context and talk in real terms, because what Michelle said there is Kieran disclosed at work and wasn't believed in 2 jobs, and he was devastated and left. And I think she said earlier on there that there's almost a definite move now towards self-employment. Do you think that is from an acceptance point of view, Kerrie, that or maybe they don't want to disclose and they feel that they have to go off because it's not suitable, there isn't those reasonable adjustments put in place?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think sometimes people, we're forever trying to hammer round pegs into square holes. And I think that's what we do a lot when we're supporting autistic people. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the community do have to say, actually, mainstream employment is an absolute nightmare. I'm going off and I'm going to set up my own business, which is incredibly empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's similar to, you could draw a parallel with mainstream schools. The child that really, really struggles to the point where I can't do that anymore. I'm going to be homeschooled. It's a similar parallel. So I think some people just have to do that for their own mental health, and that's horrendous. Employers have got a duty to make sure their employees are okay, on a very basic level. And I think, what Michelle's describing there is not being believed. Is that, again, we've got this very stereotypical view of what it is to be autistic. It's the boy that flaps or has his hands in his ears, screaming and shouting in the middle at the corner of a room. We've got to move away from that. When somebody like Kieran enters mainstream employment, they would say, you're not autistic. You don't look autistic. You're not doing anything autistic. Because Michelle and Kieran won't mind me saying this because he talks about it all the time, but he is an incredibly good masker. So he can put his mask on, but it's the after effect of that. It's all right wearing a mask all day, but when you come home, you're exhausted, you burn out, and that can lead to a breakdown ultimately.
Wow, which is really powerful stuff, Kerrie. Thanks. So for anyone watching this who might have an inkling that their daughter, their son, may be expressing some of the traits or things you've mentioned, what's your thoughts? What do we do?
I mean, in practical terms, it's about your first protocol generally is your GP.
Okay.
What I would say about that is, GPs are very busy people. They are general practitioners, so they know lots about lots of things, but they might not know a lot about autistic people. So I think, first port of call would be GP, but be prepared. Go with your list of what are those worries at the moment about your child. If you've got a health visitor or, at a very little age, if you've got a health visitor or school or anyone around you that can support with that, I would absolutely advocate for that. The process would then be, Ian, is a referral would go into a diagnostic team, basically. Now, a lot of local authorities are moving now to what they call the neurodevelopmental pathway. So that means that when that child goes through that process of diagnosis, they actually look at, potentially autism and ADHD as well. Because what we found was happening is autistic children were going down the autism pathway, and then a few years later having to restart the process again for maybe an ADHD diagnosis. So some authorities will now do the two combined, which I think is very beneficial. So yeah, I think, I think I'd say to parents as well, trust your gut instincts, because sometimes you will go to a professional for advice, and we have some incredible professionals that work in the field, but they may not be as knowledgeable about autism, and because they're a professional, we automatically think they'll know best. They work in this area, they might not. So I think it's about trusting your gut instinct.
As part of your master's, Kerrie, and I'm sure as part of your doctorate as well, you'll be doing research, you'll be pulling white papers, you're citing sources, you're interrogating. What about the stats then from people who are maybe undiagnosed but have autism? Is there anything out there where?
Yeah, there will be. I couldn't give you the specific statistic, but there is a lot. There is a lot. Okay. So, many years ago, the diagnostic rate was 1 in 100. So this was a study that was pushed out a very long time ago and hasn't really been looked at since. So 1 in 100 people will be autistic. That's what it says on paper. We now know that actually that statistic has gone to 1 in 57 children. So that didn't look at adults, this study, it just looks at children. But that's a massive shift if you think from 1 in 100 to 1 in 57. That's quite a big movement. But you will have a lot of undiagnosed children in there as well. And equally, you'll have a lot of undiagnosed adults that might choose to self-diagnose themselves. So they may have almost given themselves that diagnosis without getting it written on paper, really. And that's absolutely a personal preference and should be as valid as what we see written on paper.
So are we diagnosing better, or is something changing? And I don't want to create a huge conspiracy theory, but you did talk about diet earlier on there with your brother trying to get him to eat vegetables and stuff. Has something changed in society to make this more prevalent, or are we just uncovering what was already there but better than we?
Yeah, I think we're getting better at diagnosing.
Okay.
I think, yeah. And we're becoming more aware through the media portrayal. And 20 years ago, if we spoke about autism, genuinely people might never have heard of it. But I think we're becoming much more aware of that now. And that is having an impact maybe on diagnostic rates. Because obviously, if you were an adult 20 years ago and you were kind of thinking, I'm a bit different, don't know what this is, you might not have had the language for it. So you might not have known of autism. Okay. But now you can actually think, actually, I potentially am autistic, and then people will go through that diagnostic process.
Yeah. I've just asked anybody if they want to ask you any questions whilst we've got you here. I must show this though. Look at our Michelle there. Kieran knew I was the one because I was the only person who had ever touched him and it didn't burn.
Yeah.
What a love story.
But that's it, isn't it? And that's the reality. And I know
Mhm.
Kieran and Michelle incredibly well, and people don't get it. It's really hard to understand that statement, isn't it? If you have no understanding of it, some people might look at that and go, "What on earth? What burn?" For Kieran, he will have experienced physical touch potentially as a burning feeling. That's very real, and we must validate these experiences. It's no longer acceptable to just say, "Oh well, they'll just get on with it." It's just not acceptable, Ian, and we've got a duty, and that's what acceptance is all about, really. But everybody needs to get behind it.
Yeah, and I think that's why I wanted to do this today, Kerrie. And I'm really interested from a leadership point of view. Is I would hope that someone could disclose and that we could put those reasonable adjustments, I think the term was, in place. And it's almost upsetting to feel that people might hide their true selves and mask, as you've said there, day to day at work, where we spend the majority of our lives. Do you think? I mean, again, I don't know if you have any stats, but do you think that is a thing where we've got so many people in work hiding?
Oh, wow. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, children. So if you go back, children start to mask at a very early age, and it becomes then a survival strategy that person engages in. That then follows that person through to adulthood, and then not masking anymore is incredibly difficult. It's not like it's something you can just switch off and not mask anymore. So yes, it is a big issue for both children and adults. I think though, Ian, this does start in childhood. So I completely get what you're saying about employment, but if we can do this early support, get people to understand better when children are going through those early years. So things like, if somebody needs a movement break in school, we give them one. We don't use, there are some incredibly harming programs out there. So there's ABA therapy, for example, applied behavior analysis, which is a program where we demand eye contact. We get the child to look at us, we force it. Now, for an autistic child, that could be incredibly terrifying and painful. Yet we still have programs running like this, programs where we have kind hands. We must put our hands on our knees and listen to the teacher. That kind of social skills training can be quite damaging. And that is when our children start to learn to mask really quickly, and it does become a survival technique. And then that then leads into adulthood. So we will have tons and tons of autistic employees out there in the workplace today that are just putting on a front. They're trying really hard to get through the day. You know, they're trying to do all that social stuff. They're trying to compete with all that sensory information. People are giving them tons of information to remember, you know, in their working memory, and they're struggling to do that. Now, without those reasonable adjustments, people are always going to be masking. People are never going to feel like they can be themselves.
Yeah.
The other big thing is the cure culture. So there still exists a cure culture around autistic people. You know, there's a school over in the States where they were still using electric shock treatments on children, you know, and if autistic children did any flapping or spinning or anything that was deemed autistic, we would give them a little electric shock. You know, there was a ban. It went to the government and there was a ban put in for that. And the ban got overruled. They continued to use it as a type of behaviour modification. There is portions going around the internet where you can give your child an enema, but what you're giving them is bleach. And the idea is that you bleach the autism out of the child's body. So I think, you know, with acceptance, we have got to be aware that there is some horrendous stuff exists out there, and there are still some people or some communities actually that are, you know, actively trying to find that magic pill to cure autistic people. And that's terrifying. Imagine if you lived in a world like that, Ian, where, you know, every day you were fighting for your right to be who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I thought about my daughter there for a moment when you were chatting about masking in school. I mean, I don't mind sharing this. I had a tough time this morning before I left for work. Anxiety was massive for Jess this morning. I had her at a great International Women's Day event last night. Heard from some really inspirational speakers. She was bouncing when she got home. She gave us a big hug, which is rare for a 13-year-old, right? And then this morning, very anxious. She has a pass to leave the class if she needs it, but she doesn't want to use it because when she does, it's all eyes on her.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And she doesn't understand some of the subject matter she's learning, but she can't put her hand up because it's all eyes on her. And obviously, you know, I'm not going too far in the pandemic, but you know, our children have suffered massively over this last couple of years, and trying to get them back, it is proven tough for me, parents, school governors, everybody who's supporting our children. So it's almost like I've had a little inkling into the life of autism through, and I don't mean to do autism a disservice, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get that. And you know what you're talking about there with your daughter, we talk a lot about energy accounting. So it might be that last night, you know, the energy got drained. She had an amazing time at the event, but actually it was really hard work. You know, when you've got to put it's like, imagine going to a social event you really don't want to go to. So, you know, you're going home on a Friday night, you're going to watch Netflix and have a glass of wine and chill out. And somebody rings and says, actually, come over, we're going to have a big family event. And you think, oh, I've got to put you put your mask on and you do your smiling, you do your eye contact, you do your jokes and you laugh, even though you feel absolutely exhausted. So, you know, in that instance, we talk about this energy accounting. What is it that drains your battery throughout the day? And for autistic people, that could be too much sensory stimulus, being forced to communicate when they're finding it difficult, having to do that ton of work, even though it's too hard for them. All of that drains the battery. And then what we need to do is find ways to charge that battery. Now, that might look unusual to a non-autistic person, but it makes complete sense to that individual. So that might be spinning, jumping, twiddling a pen, doodling, running up and down the stairs, whatever it is that works to recharge that individual's battery is what needs to happen, as long as, of course, it's not risky and hurting them. And I think that's the bit that sometimes professionals don't understand, that just because it doesn't make sense to you does not mean it's not valid, you know.
It's a really good point. Our Jess draws. She loves to sit and draw. Whereas, you know, I feel it's great that she's not on an iPad or on a phone or on TikTok or something. But actually, you're right, it is her doing something for her, which will, you know, recharge her, if you like. So, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, people, you know, Nick actually will know this. I think she might relate to it. But my thing is stationery shops. I absolutely love stationery. If you've seen my office, I've got notebooks for every different occasion of my life. So get me in Paper Chase and I'll stand there all day looking at paper. And people go, It's just paper, Kerrie. What are you? But it's my thing. It's just like total, chill out with the stationery. It's what makes sense to you as a person.
Yeah. Thanks for raising that point, Michelle, there about, home education. There's a lot more people going down that route, and if that's the route, then great. We've got a question here from our George here. Hi, Kerrie. What would you say is the biggest challenge faced by people who have autism or are undergoing a diagnosis?
I think the biggest challenge is I think it's a societal thing that's the biggest challenge, actually, and that's around lack of understanding. But not just lack of understanding. When people do try to learn about autism, they're often presented with a lot of inaccurate information, a lot of misconceptions. So I think that is very challenging for an autistic person or for somebody who is going through diagnosis, because then people have the wrong information about who you are. And then you get things like what Kieran got, which is, you don't look autistic, you can't be autistic. I also think, Ian, there's a big challenge in itself in diagnostic processes. So they tend to be quite long. For an autistic person, they can be incredibly tiring because you've got to sit and answer tons of questions and do loads of tests. The waiting times for some of those diagnostic appointments is very long, particularly with COVID. We've seen an increase. But I have to say, even before COVID, we still had very long diagnostic waiting times. So I think there's lots of challenges. And I think, we talk about acceptance a lot, and we must, but we've always got to acknowledge the challenges, because life is challenging for autistic people. But a lot of that is because of societal stuff that goes on around the autistic person.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kerrie. Claire rose a really good point here. I think that potentially having your child labelled is a huge problem still. So seeking diagnosis is often a last resort. What's your thoughts on that, Kerrie?
So I get what Claire's saying. For some families, it's not something that they want to pursue at all. And, I can completely understand why. And I think it's because, again, this inaccurate knowledge. So a lot of people still think that autistic kids are just naughty kids. They're not at all. Yes, they can still push their luck, but generally they're responding to something in their environment or something that's causing them great distress. Okay, so some families will shy away from getting their child diagnosed because they're worried about the implications. They're worried about how their classmates will see them if they have a diagnosis, how teachers might treat them, how employers, we've just discussed about the problems with employment, how will I be treated if I have that label? So I do actually really get what Claire was saying. And I think it's really sad that families feel like that. I also think sometimes parents aren't always believed. So when they go for those diagnostic appointments, the parents' experiences might not be validated, and that can put people off even going through that door.
Claire has asked another question.
Claire. It's my accent, Claire. Sorry, Claire.
She asks a really important one, and I'm really glad that she's asked it. Once a colleague opens up and lets team members know about autism, how can we then support them on a day-to-day level?
Yeah, I would say, Claire, work with the person, find out what works for them. So, you could go and look at a textbook and think, oh, actually, autistic people need visual cues. Autistic people need a quiet space. These kind of standard tick box kind of stock responses we get. I think it is about getting to know that person, and if they feel comfortable, asking them, what is it that works for you? How can we make this workspace better? And again, it doesn't have to be huge, expensive things that we put in place. It could be something incredibly simple, like a screen between computers so that I don't have to look at the guy next to me. It could be a staggered lunch break, so I don't have to go in that busy canteen when everybody's in there. Can the person start earlier or finish later? So flexible working patterns. It's all of this stuff that makes a difference. I mean, we've got an incredible employment futures team at North East Autism Society, which I can send details, Claire, to you about that. And they work directly with employers to actually say, right, okay, what's going to work for this individual? They're very passionate about getting autistic people jobs. So they will get a person a job and work with the employer to make sure it's the right fit, which is brilliant.
I love that. And Claire might be interested in that, because I know she likes to
Definitely
make sure that she's up to speed on these things. Shall we talk about your book then? Because lockdown was busy for you. You took to your keyboard and
Yeah.
you got it all out of your head and you put it onto paper. So how's that going? What's the book called? Tell us all about it.
So the book is called The Infinite Journey, which is on Amazon. Basically, I've always wanted to write a book. Since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to be an author. It didn't matter really what it was about when I was little. I used to, draw pictures and write words and think I was, really clever. So in lockdown, obviously, we all had a lot more time on our hands. I couldn't just sit around drinking wine and eating takeaways every night. So I thought, let's do something productive here. So all I did is wrote down everything in my head about what my experience has been supporting autistic children. And it was a really therapeutic activity, actually, Ian, for me.
Mhm.
The focus of the book is on 3 autistic children that I have supported in the past. The names in the book are changed. And it was really about what I learned from those children. So these are children that I used to spend up to 7 hours a day with. Every day of the week, I would write programs of support for them. We would go to school, the park, feed the ducks, the squirrel. We had a squirrel park near us, which was brilliant. You name it, we kind of did it together. And I think the beauty, which I hope what is represented in the book, is the relationship between me and those children. It gets a bit emotional when I talk about this because they're still part of my life. The people in that book, I still keep in contact with the parents. But I suppose for me, they were the people that set me off on the journey, as well as my brother. They set me off on the journey of where I am today, really. And just trying to understand those little idiosyncrasies at the time, what did they mean? What were they trying to tell me? What were they, when the little boy headbutted me, he genuinely didn't want to hurt me. What was going on for him in that moment? Actually, it was that I was talking too much. You can't imagine that, can you, Ian? I was twittering onto him and he's like thinking, just go away. She's not going away, so I'm going to headbutt her. And what I wanted to get across was really that practitioner's journey of learning. So I think we've all got to be reflective practitioners. We can all go to work and come home and try and think, forget work, we'll put it in the past. But I think when you work in the field of supporting people, you've got to reflect on what you've learned that day and how you can then put that into practice for the next day. So that was the book, really. I sat and I written it and I just written everything that came out my head. I had to have a proofreader because grammar and spelling is not very good. Some people might have noticed a couple of typos in the book, but it genuinely was everything that I'd been thinking about for like the last very long time without giving my age away. So I was really pleased with it, and I've been really pleased with the response of it, Ian, because I've had practitioners get in touch with me and say, actually, the situations you've described in that book, I've been part of before, but I've never seen it from that perspective. So it's almost about looking at things from a different lens, I suppose.
Who is the book designed or focused for? I think you've said there it was quite therapeutic for you to get it out of your head. But quite often when if you're a business, you create a product or a service, it's designed for someone, a particular buying persona. And in my mind, I'm thinking, who is this for? But actually, it almost sounds like it's for anybody, because you said there about if you're in a place where you support people, that could be a teacher, an employer, a school governor, or a trustee of a child, whatever in society.
Yeah.
We should be trying to educate ourselves on all these things that are out there, maybe.
Yeah. I would say it's for everyone, Ian, and there's a whole diverse range of people that have bought the book. But I think, one of the lovely comments I got back is, it's been really nice. This hasn't been written in an academic manner at all. It was never meant to be an academic thesis or anything. We've got enough of that going on. And it's very relatable. That's what the feedback's been. So, if you're a parent, a professional, an autistic person, hopefully there's little bits in there for everyone. So it's been really nice that it's actually reached such a diverse population, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And you can get it on Amazon. Do you want to put some plugs out? Where can we get it? Can someone put a link in the comments for Kerrie?
I think Michelle could probably put a link in. So it's The Infinite Journey and it's on Amazon. So I don't know how to do links and I'm not touching the screen because something might happen and I might disappear. But if somebody wants to stick it in for me, that'd be brilliant. I don't know if I've got any people still here.
I'm sure they will. And can they not reach out to you, Kerrie, and get one from you, or does it have to be from Amazon?
You've got to really go through Amazon. Yeah, they're the people. But literally, if you just type in the Amazon search bar, The Infinite Journey, I think I've got to, hang on, I'll show you what it looks like so you know.
Oh, hold on, we're getting props.
There we go.
Get a prop.
Yeah. So it looks like this on Amazon. and just type my name in and it'll come up. You can see this is a bit bashed. But yeah, hopefully people will enjoy it. I have now 33 5-star reviews on Amazon, so I'm very pleased with that.
Well, we talked about that at the top of the show about sharing and popping love out there on social media, because it's interesting. We create something, Kerrie, actually you've created a bit of content there. People might read it and it's easy for them not then just to put it down, but actually leaving a review is so powerful. So yes, if you have got the book or if you buy it, remember to leave a review, and there's the link in the comments as well for the Amazon
Oh, thanks, Michelle.
link. Yeah, wonderful. So leave a review and click share on this, get Kerrie's word out, because I do think it's important for us all to get up to speed on these things. And thanks for Claire for chipping in there from RTC, because she is someone who wants to learn more about some of these stories. Sorry, I'm looking at our comments here. There's our George popping it in as well. Thanks for that.
Thanks, George.
Right, missus, anything else before we go?
Yeah, just before we go, obviously Autism Acceptance Week is coming up. I mean, it should be Autism Acceptance Day every day, but 1 week of the year, we really, from North East Autism Society, we push tons of content out. So what I would just recommend people do is follow the campaign. Michelle, could you put NEAS's website in, if you don't mind, if that's okay? We are going to be having a conference as well this year, which you can find on the website. I've got this written down, actually. So on the 28th of April, we're having our second Autism Acceptance Conference, which is incredible. Last year we did the first one. The co-host is the lovely Kieran Rose with myself. We do a bit of Ant and Deck presenting, which is lovely. And all the speakers are autistic again this year. So it's an incredible event. There's a £10 charge this year, but hopefully it'll be worth it. We also have between the 28th of March and the 3rd of April, we are going to be lighting up landmarks around the Northeast gold. So Harrington Park, the bridges will all be going gold. If you have any teachers in the room, we also have a teacher's toolkit that we want to send out to schools to get our little ones and big ones a little bit more educated. And we have our annual walk for acceptance on the 22nd of April in Harrington Park. So if you just go on the website, everything will be on there.
Well done. I'm guessing your brooch here is gold.
Yes, you can order these on the website as well. So this is the infinity loop, which is the sign for autistic acceptance as well. So you can have a look at that.
So it's a tenner to put your bum on the seat, right? But why can we not charge them 20, Kerrie, and they get a free book?
Oh, hey, that's a good idea, isn't it? I like that.
Nice.
Onto the marketing fork. Might still be on here. I'll mention that.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I know you've got to get off. You've got a meeting after this, but you've done 57 minutes. I bet that went like a flash, did it?
Wow. Yeah, I could keep talking. It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, just like being down the brewery with me in the pint.
Down the pub, exactly. Yeah, and thanks everyone for the comments as well. We've got some lovely comments, which is nice.
You have. Everyone has absolutely loved this. You've got a lot of love going on, my friend. So well done, and thanks for everything you do in this particular field. You're an absolute rock star. I mean, putting your cap in the ring to do your doctorate as well. You're a legend. So there's our man there. Look, there's your favourite beer supplier.
Oh, there's Chris. Hi, Chris. You're right. So he did tune in. He was saying yesterday he wasn't going to tune in, but he has. That's good.
I'm surprised he hasn't put one more than two brew in the comments as a little.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not advertising his dog biscuits.
Oh yes, of course.
Which is the other venture.
Yes, indeed. Right, there you go. I'm gonna let Andrew have the final word. We need more people like you, Kerrie.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. That's really touching. Thank you. It means a lot.
Thanks for joining us, Finley, as well. Right, you get yourself away then on your next appointment.
I will. Well, thank you for having me, Ian. That's lovely, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Okay, cheers, Kerrie.
See you later. Bye.
There you go. There's our Kerrie, International Women's Day 2022 speaker for us today. Wow, what a really powerful session that was. I learned so much, and I think it's really important for us to take time out of our day like this and, upskill ourselves, but also pass that message on, share this podcast as well to others who could maybe, I don't know, take something from that. I think, like, as I said earlier on, I think we all could do with just upskilling ourselves and learning about these things. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks everyone for chipping in today. I know you've supported us a lot It really means a lot. So enjoy the rest of your day. We'll probably be going live next week as well, so hopefully you'll join us there. So thanks for watching, and make it a great International Women's Day 2022.